Hi, this is Dan Buller, retired electronics engineer, sitting on the front deck of my houseboat. It's dripping on me. I want to talk about FFTs on Excel, and I talk about how it takes so long. It's like 1,000,000 times slower in Excel to do an FFT than it would be if you just ran it on the code. And the wind's been doing some crazy stuff. But it doesn't have to be. The computer's a lot faster than that, or it should be. And so I stumbled across this thing by this guy, H.J. Park. He wrote this FFT in VBA, which is Visual Basic. It's a Visual Basic something, application or something. And so Visual Basic, and it's really cool because you get to see the code for the FFT. Now, believe it or not, you don't really have to understand what the FFT is all about. By the way, there's a train going by and they're blowing their whistle, so it's pretty cool. I love living here. So, I've written VBA, my son's written VBA. It's really no big deal, it's really easy, and you can incorporate this FFT into your Excel if you've got Excel on your computer. If you don't, well then you better get Excel, or you better just forget about it and sign off, But this FFT apparently is much faster than the FFT in Excel. It has some issues though that I would have to say, well, I will use it, but I'm not going to use it for some stuff. But it's really a cool thing, and VBA it's no big deal. When I was at Tektronix, I wrote VBA code for it was one of the military parts. I forget which one. Oh, it was for the Trident. That's what it was, for the Trident missile. And what I did was it was really cool. I wrote a thing called anti-median, which everybody knows what median is. It finds the middle value, not the center, but it finds the middle value, the value closest to the center of a string of things. And so I think we were expected to test 20 parts or something, and so whatever value for each test was the median, you had to find that. But the anti-median does the opposite. It finds the part, the value furthest away from the center. And I thought that would be a really good thing for these guys to know, to see what our spread was. But apparently my boss didn't agree with me. It's just a nuclear missile. What could go wrong, If something goes wrong, well, who knows. But anyway, but let me show you the code for this. It's pretty cool, and like I said, it's no big deal to do VBA, and then you can incorporate it into Excel, and it takes I think they said it's a second for 16 kilobyte FFTs. Now, I don't know what a kilobyte FFT is. I don't know how many samples that is, but it's pretty wild. Oh man, the sun's shining. It's beautiful back there. Right away, let's take a look at the code. Author H.J. Park, back in 2019, he wrote this. Public constant mypi as double 3.14159 blah blah blah. That's, everybody does that if you're doing anything with pi and stuff. And then function log2 x as long as double. Okay, so this is a log2 FFT. It's not a chirp Z. There are some places where you can do, on the new tester that my buddy Daver is working on, you could do any number of samples in the FFT. But this one requires that it be log2. So it has to be 2 to the power of whatever. 2 to the power of 10 is 1024. 2 to the power of 11 is 2048. It has to be a power of 2. But the good news is this function takes values of waveforms much deeper than 2048 or 4096. You can go, I don't think it has a limit, so whatever the limit is for Excel. But and I know that the limit for Excel is greater than 10K. because in that last thing that I gave you, nobody asked for a download, but in that last thing I gave you, it's 10K in the transfer function. So if you want to get a look at my transfer function, it's in there. Just email me, dan@danbuller.com, and I'll give it to you, and you can see how my transfer function works. The Buller Harmonic Solution's not in there. It's only in my books. It'll cost you a whole $24 or something to buy it. So let's go down to public function is power of 2, and here if n is equal to 0, then go to exit function. So it looks at whatever you've got selected for that wave. If it's 0, it's right away, it's not valid. If application worksheet, ceiling, math, blah, 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 log 2, n equals da 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 da. If power is power of 2 equals true, otherwise power of 2 equals false, and it exits the function. So if you don't have a power of 2 number of samples in your wave, it will bail out. So you're not allowed to do a FFT on anything that isn't the power of 2. That's why, if you look at my earliest video on doing an FFT, I talked to you about you have to have an M, which is odd. You don't have to, but it's much better if you do, because the chances of you stomping on, getting replications is much lower. If it doesn't, M does not have to be prime. I did a video on that. M does not have to be prime, but M should be odd, and that'll solve the problem right there. And because you always have a power of 2 number of samples for your N, it only needs to not be even. That's all you have to worry about. So I use an M of 9 a lot, M of 21. Neither of those is prime. There's a really good video. I'm going to try to give you the link for that video for how the FFT works. Tukey is the guy who figured it out, and I read somewhere his boss was Garwin, and Garwin looked at it and figured out what he had done, and he says, oh, this is like a really great improvement on the DFT, and it's a great day in math for this thing to be developed. And Tukey says, well, if there's anything else I can do, let me know. But Tukey was very bothered by the fact that Garwin assigned him to do the FFT, because Tukey didn't really want to do it. He had other things going on. He had other projects he was working on, and I've done that too. I'm working on my random number generator, and I told my boss that I'm working on my random number generator, so I can't do what you're asking me to do. Well, he thought I meant the test pattern generator, so he left me alone. But in fact, I was really working on a random number generator for my slot machine program, which had nothing to do with work. But it got me out of doing what he wanted me to do. So it was great. So that's the way life works. Anyway, so it's a great thing. It'll get you through the FFT a lot faster if you can't find any other way to do an FFT. And you really have to understand FFTs. It's been said that the FFT is the greatest mathematical invention of the 20th century, and I believe it. And Gauss actually figured it out back in 18-something. Gauss figured it out long ago, but nobody paid attention to what he was doing. Sound familiar? So it could be that nobody will ever figure out what I'm talking about, and it may go by the wayside. Nobody will ever know, but I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But you should learn how to do an FFT, if for no other reason, just to know what an FFT is. And it's only 2 letters. One of them's repeated twice. FFT, fast Fourier transform. You really need to know how to do one. And if you want, you can download it, and you can put it in Excel, and you can have a fast FFT. It's too bad I didn't know about this. This was back in 2019 that they came up with this, or the HJ Park came up with this. And so it's too late for me to solve all my problems, but because I wrote my book back in 2014. So the FFT, big deal, big deal. You got to learn how to do an FFT. That FFT button on Tektronix scope doesn't mean FFT. That means I'm going to fool you into thinking I'm doing an FFT, but I'm not really. And I can tell you for a fact, Evan Belt worked for Tektronix. Evan Belt had to buy a book on the FFT so he would know how it worked. And he works at Tektronix even now, I think. And remember, they do windowing. And the windowing, you cannot trust a windowed wave. You cannot trust a windowed wave. So don't believe scopes, spectrum analyzers, none of those things. An Applicos, Audio Precision, a Teradyne, Credence, LTX, one of those machines will do the trick. It's got to have coherent sampling. If you do coherent sampling, you can see what's going on. If you hit the FFT button on a scope, you're just fooling yourself. Remember what that guy who worked at Tektronix told me. An FFT is just an approximation. Well, from his point of view, yes, an FFT is an approximation because he didn't know what the FFT actually did. He just knew what the button was. That's all it was. And yeah, you can explain a lot of things away, but you know, if you have no fucking brains, you know, the people at Tektronix are that way. People at Raytheon, same thing, you know. But don't worry, you know, they did the code for nuclear missiles, so you know what could go wrong. Anyway, it's a beautiful day, so I'm going to get out of here. So once again, from the river, this is Dan Bullard. See ya.